Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new podcast here on Four Lads. I guess we're calling this Four Lads Bite-Size, although given how me and especially one of my other guests talk, it might go a little bit longer than what you think is Bite-Size, but we'll see how we go. It's the first one. So, without further ado, introducing my two co-hosts. First of all, Kenny.
Hi, Andrew. How are you doing?
Oh, okay. Thank you for introducing me, because I didn't do that, because why would I? We're starting as we mean to go on. And joining myself and Kenny is Andy. How are you doing, mate?
Evening, guys. Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks.
Lovely stuff. This is, going to be, I think, adding a little bit more flavour to what Stevie typically does in terms of his post-match reaction podcasts. What we want to do is, dig a little bit deeper into some of the bigger events and probably as the season gets back underway again for the second half, start to look to do some previews and reviews of the games and, have a little bit more of a chat and a bit more time to dwell on some of the bits that happened in the game, some of the key moments, that kind of thing. Our plan at the moment is obviously the podcast that you're listening to. If you've looked at the title, you know that we're talking about the season so far and our expectations for the second half. We're also planning to do a little transfer roundup podcast, which will probably be with you towards the end of this week, where we'll look, ahead to what we expect for the transfer window. We'll also look at transfers that have happened or that we hope that will happen in due course. But yeah, We're doing this, it's obviously brand new. We want to do this with the participation of the audience as well. So please feed back to us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. If you tell us the entire thing's terrible, probably won't pass that on to Stevie. We'll keep that one to ourselves. But everything else, constructive criticism, is obviously very welcome. So without further ado, and conscious of our time limit set by the big boss, what we want to do first is look back on how our season has gone so far. We obviously know that we've had two managers so far this season, which is never really a good sign. And it's fair to say that it's been a mixed bag of results. But we do find ourselves halfway through the season, 8 points back with a game in hand and with one trophy under our belt. So, Kenny, I'll start with you first, mate. We obviously went into this off the back of a fairly big summer spend under Michael Beale, no director of football, but I think it would be not unreasonable to say that the consensus towards the end of last season was, okay, things haven't been perfect, but he's got that win over Celtic. Let's see how he does with his own players in. We clearly, as a club, backed the manager in terms of financial outlay, but we're not going to go through every game in detail, but it's probably worth looking back at the results at the start of the season against Killy and how that really set the mood for the season going forward.
Yeah, it was a pretty grim 90 minutes, that, wasn't it? You put your faith in Michael Beale and his signings, and it just didn't look right at all from start to finish. Tough pitch. It was very hot that day, if I remember right, and it was just a very disjointed performance. We didn't really look anything like what you would hope we were going to be. But to be fair, we had seen signs of that already in pre-season. We hadn't had a good performance really at all in pre-season either, Andrew. So
yeah,
the writing might well have been on the wall much quicker than we perhaps thought it was going to be, to be honest. But I came away from that game very, very deflated, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's never a great way to open up your season, getting a beating off of Killy, although they would go on strength to strength throughout the course of this first half at least. So you can't say it was a one-off result, unlike certain others that we'll get to later on. But we continued in. We've got our Champions League qualifiers. Again, a nice position to be in. But as I think we'd prove, getting eventually a 3-2 win on aggregate over Servette, and then as we go into the latter bits of August, eventually we get a draw relatively respectfully against PSV at Ibrox. But Andy, then we go to their place, and I think it's fair to say that things don't go well for Rangers come that return fixture.
No, it definitely didn't go well at all. It was one of those nights where the 5-1 flattered us, I think, worryingly. I think Jack Butland was our man of the match, and that kind of says it all. I mean, it was only a year ago that we obviously knocked PSV out, but one thing, PSV have a good team. They had really good players. But I think it was the manner of the defeat that was really worrying. You know, it was the way we kind of just capitulated and collapsed and just gifted them goal after goal. I think that was the real thing that kind of knocked the stuffing out of everybody. You know, if you go down 2-1 away from home, you go down fighting. Fair enough, they're a good side, we know that. But, you know, I think just the manner of the defeat just absolutely knocked the stuffing out of everybody.
Yeah, I think that's it. We've already had, obviously, one mood breaker with Killy. This one hurt a lot. But as we demonstrated, I think, last season as well, the Champions League increasingly feels like it's something that's going to be shutting out teams from smaller leagues. You know, I include ourselves, and obviously I don't really want to lump ourselves in with them, but they've not exactly demonstrated a great deal of prowess in the Champions League either. So increasingly it's a lot of money, but with that on one hand, PSV weren't exactly operating on a massive budget that was different to ours. We were both in the same league. Andy, as you say, we'd gone toe to toe with them and put them out just the season prior. So it was disheartening. But the great thing was we had an old firm at home, Kenny, that we could bounce back from, you know, against a Celtic team who looked like they were there to be got at. So obviously that went really well, right?
Yeah, that's when the writing was on the wall for Michael Beale, to be honest. You've got 50,000 people, you know, in the stadium. You've got no away support, and you turn up and play like the away team. My abiding memory of that actually was the amount of shouting and bawling amongst the players at times. It was just really clear watching it that they didn't really understand what they were meant to be doing, Andrew. And that's where, you know, we've lost that game. It may be a little bit unfortunate to lose the game in some ways, but yeah, the way we were set up that night, or that day, I beg your pardon, really did set alarm bells for me. I have to be honest. It was not a good look for a Rangers manager to do that. I didn't think, to sit in and try and hit them on the break in your own, you know, in your own stadium is a silly thing to do, and it turns fans against you really quite quickly, Andrew.
Yeah, and better Rangers teams have lost to Celtic in the past at home as well. But, you know, these things happen. A lot of it's down to the manner of the defence, how it went about, how confident the manager was. It was widely said in the run-up to this, you know, it's the weakest Celtic defence that we've ever come up against, so they're there to be got at. And instead, we were passive, we were slow. As Kenny says, we were very disorganised, very disheartening. I want to just get a quick temperature gauge, Joe. Kenny, at this point, you said you were done. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, you were finished with Michael Beale at this point. Is that right? I don't want to misrepresent you here.
I was, by that point, yeah. I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel in terms of his signings at all. I thought, you know, he'd spent a lot of money in the summer, and we had regressed massively. You know, from what effectively last season wasn't a great Rangers side, and particularly up front wasn't great, and we looked worse. And it was just one massive red flag after another. I thought at the start of the season that there was no cohesion to our play, and that we were playing with a little bit of fear, I think, and quite clearly, I thought, I don't know what you two guys thought, but quite clearly to me, I thought that the players didn't understand the message that the manager was trying to get across, and that particular game was the final kind of straw for me. I thought you had to go then. Yeah,
I think at that point you've played a month's worth of football, plus the pre-season as well, obviously in terms of friendlies. From my perspective, I think I was in the same boat as you, Kenny. Didn't see a plan forward, quite frankly, in terms of how that manager was going to turn things around. Andy, how about you? Any massive disagreements there, or?
No, and I think the thing that struck me at the end of the game was how toxic the stadium was. I mean, I've had my season ticket for 20 years. Kenny's been going longer than me, and I don't think I've ever seen Ibrox like that at the end of a game. You know, you get booing, you get people unhappy, but I don't think I've ever seen it like that. And I think when things get that bad, it's a matter of time. You know, Beale's a dead man walking at that point. It's a case of how long, not if he can turn it around. It's just a case of when he's going to go.
Yeah, I think it was kind of clear
there was a real venom in there, wasn't there, Andy?
Yeah. I mean,
real anger.
Yeah, and it would have taken some string of results, I think, to have turned that round, for anybody.
100%. I think what's remarkable is that we do go away on a short break. Michael Beale doesn't lose his job over that period. And then when we come back, we go on a run of what on paper looked like a fairly decent group of results. Win over St Johnstone. We get a 1-0 win over Real Betis at home, which is fantastic. Sets us up quite nicely for the group, as we'll see going forward. Routine win over Motherwell and a 4-0 win over Livingston. So things look like they're on track. But then, Andy, we come up against Aberdeen at Ibrox. I mean, this is, I think if we look at the season as a whole so far, and we'll obviously look ahead to the rest of the season, but for Michael Beale, this one was, if the Celtic one was the final straw, this one was unequivocal. The atmosphere after this one was brutal.
Yeah, this was the final nail, wasn't it, in this case? And, there just was no coming back from this one at all. I mean, at that point, it had to go. Aberdeen are a really poor side. I mean, you see that from where they were in the league. I think after this game, it was only the points against us that kept them off the bottom of the table.
That's right. Yeah.
And again, it was just a wee bit of adversity. You lose a goal, and we just collapsed again. It was just, and I think you saw it in the second half. Michael Beale didn't even leave his seat in the dugout. He sat there. I think he knew the writing was on the wall at that.
But the good news is we got a nice interim team of managers to come in to look after us. So first of all, Michael Beale does get the sack after that result. I think it was, if they thought they could hold on after the Celtic game, they couldn't hold on after this one. Unfortunately, the dream team of Stephen Davis and Alex Ray can't do a lot against Aris Limassol, who were absolutely our bogey team this year in the Europa League, losing 2-1 away at their place. They turned things around with a 3-0 win against St Mirren, and then we're into the break and we're on the hunt for a manager. We don't have to wait long either, because I think within the first few days, Philippe Clement is confirmed as our new manager, and he gets things turned around quite quickly with a 4-0 result over Hibs. Fair to say that he does quite well after that as well, because we then go on an unbeaten run, capturing a vital point against Sparta Prague away. We take a run through Aberdeen again. We go away to their place, and we somehow contrive to drop 2 points to them, which is, I think it's fair to say, the first blemish. And then again, we come up against Limassol in the Europa. We lose another point there. But the rest of the time, we are then going on a run through to the League Cup final, where we're just kind of hoping and praying that we don't cock things up. And before that, we have a game away in Real Betis, where Kenny, through the miracle of the group stage, it all comes down to this game. If we win, great. We're going to win the league. We're going to win the Europa League group, and we'll go through seeded through to the round of 16. We lose it, we are probably either Conference League. I don't think it was possible at this point for us to be out entirely, but we were in a situation where we were looking probably at Conference League football. But miracle of miracles, we get a 3-2 win away in Real Betis, the hardest team on paper, proving to be the one we got the most consistent results against.
Yeah, the Betis game was the game that I had to just put that game down to a kind of free hit, where I actually fully expected us to finish third in the group and just kind of move on with it and not take the Conference League too seriously when we come back after the winter break, if you like. But that was the night that I actually sat, my jaw kind of hit the floor a few times, how good we were on the night. I was very, very impressed with Rangers that day, and it was the kind of confirmation that I wanted about Philippe Clement, if you like, where I actually thought, if he's capable of doing this, with all due respect with this group of players, and it's not his own players, we know that obviously. Yeah. What will he be able to do when he starts to mould and shape his own team? So he has my undivided support, quite clearly. But that particular performance on the night, we actually went there. We had to ride our luck a little bit a couple of times, with them hitting the bar and stuff like that. But we played exceptionally well and just about shaded that game, I thought, in the end, purely on the basis of chances created and the fact that Betis kind of ran out of steam. They kind of ran out of ideas about how to break us down, and I thought that was probably in my opinion, our best performance of the season so far, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I find it hard to argue against that. And then, Andy, happily, we don't let the European hangover affect us too badly, because a couple of days later, we go to Hampden and manage to pick up the first silverware of the Big Phil era. So, fair to say that this wasn't exactly a sterling performance either. Aberdeen having done their own European adventures a couple of nights previously as well. But you know what? The most important thing is, on paper, I'm looking at it right now, and it looks like Rangers got a 1-0 win over Aberdeen, which meant they lifted the cup. And in the end, that's the most important thing, right?
Yep, that's all that matters. I mean, we have seen our record in the cup competitions under Gerrard. You know, Gio managed to pick up a Scottish Cup, but it's one thing we've not been good enough at. You know, we've missed really good chances for trophies in the past. We've been knocked out by teams like Aberdeen, whether we've played well or not. So this was the big one, whether we could just go over the line, and we did. We were the better team. You know, Aberdeen weren't really in the game at all. You know, I don't think Buckland had much to do until right near the end of the game. But it was just about getting that result, winning the trophy that you should win. You know, you get to the final against Aberdeen, you should win it, and doing what we should. That's something Rangers managers haven't done enough of in the past. So, you know, to come away with the cup after the win in Betis, you know, was a really huge moment. It was a big week for the club and a big week for the manager.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Unfortunately, despite December, I think at least relatively speaking, being an exceptionally good month for us, with points being dropped on the other side of the city. Unfortunately, getting an Old Firm win at their patch proves a step too difficult. It's fair to say that we weren't probably just playing against 11 men that day. There were other factors, I think, at play, which have been discussed extensively elsewhere. So I don't want to rehash that tonight, because we've got 2 minutes left, and otherwise Stevie will beat me up. So can't be having that. But I think, unfortunately, the Old Firm result is the only black mark that we can point to under Big Phil's regime. But that being said, we are, after a result against Killy, just to round out that first half of the season, we are 8 points back, but with 2 games in hand, which are eminently winnable, I would say. And despite how we started this season, there is still very much a title race on. But Kenny, I'll come to you first then. I think it's fair to say I don't need to get your assessment of how things went under Mick Beale's part of this, but what are your kind of predictions? What do you think can be done with Big Phil into the second half of the season, and what are your expectations at this point?
I have plenty of hope and expectation, actually, Andrew. I think a lot will depend on what comes in and what goes out in January now. But if we can improve a couple of positions, particularly up front, I've got to be honest, I think we need another striker in there, a goal-scoring striker. If we can get that and he can tweak with the squad, then I'm very optimistic, Andrew, that we will challenge all the way through to the end of this season. And I think it will be a great learning curve for the manager, in the sense that he will have had 3/4 of a season going into next season to be able to understand the away grounds, the teams that we're going to play. And I am full of optimism, actually, with this guy. I have to be honest, Andrew. I'm very, very impressed by Philippe Clement so far. So more power to him.
No, love to hear that, Kenny. And Andy, same question to you.
Yeah, I think my concern is just how far he can drag this group of players. You know, I don't think he's got the best squad in the league. I think we're a bit short in certain areas, and maybe that's where we can do a bit of work in January. But the manager's done it so far. If he can keep that going, if you can win your games in hand and put a bit of pressure on the other side of the city, you know, they've not had to deal with that for a while. So that's something we really need to try and do in the short term, is just get a few wins on the board, put a bit of pressure on and see where that takes us. But, you know, the manager's done a tremendous job so far to drag this team as far as he has. And if he can just keep it going a little bit further, you know, there's a challenge there to be had.
It's fair to say that with an actual striker up front, yeah, things just start looking a lot brighter already. So, yeah, we can hope. But we'll be with you guys for the rest of the season going forwards. We will, as I said at the start, have another pod coming up probably at the end of this week, talking about transfers, what we've got so far, incomings, outgoings, and what we hope to see continuing on that front. And then we'll be back the following week to discuss our kind of friendly results, what's been happening over the break, and previewing the cup game against Dumbarton. So it's been a pleasure talking to you guys. I hope it's been okay for the first time. You know, they say that's always the toughest one. But Kenny, I'll come to you first, mate. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Back in the saddle again, mate.
Yeah, good to be back, isn't it, Andrew? Thoroughly enjoyed that, mate. Thanks very much. And cheers, Andy. Enjoyed that.
Yep, thanks, guys. Thanks for that.
Cheers, Andy. And everyone listening, we hope you continue to follow, subscribe, like all the good stuff that we like people to do with the podcasts here over on Four Lads Now. It's been a pleasure. We'll look forward to talking to you soon. But bye for now. Four Lads Bite-Size Podcast is exclusively sponsored by Rhino Express in association with Zenith Coins, Alexander Campbell Interiors and Wrenches Pools. Please don't forget to drop us a like and a follow if you enjoy all our content, and if you're listening on a podcast channel, please subscribe as it really helps the podcast grow. We hope you enjoyed the show. Bye for now.